How do everyone, and welcome back to Royville Reads. My name is Stefan. So I have a type of book I haven't done yet. It's a historical novel. I'm a big fan of Westerns. I'm a big fan of the Western time period. So I've read a lot about Tombstone and the characters around Tombstone. I didn't know this book existed a couple of weeks ago, and when I found out, I definitely had to pick it up, and I tore through it. And it is The Birdcage Theater, The Curtain Rises on Tombstone, Arizona's National Treasure. And it is written by, I am going to literally butcher this name, and I sincerely apologize to Michael. But it is Michael Paul Mihaljevich. But yeah, so this book is from, let me see here, copyright 2024. So it's not obviously that old, maybe year and a half, 2 years old. So yeah, it was published with permissions from North Texas Press. But yeah. So anyway, this book is all about the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona. It is... I'm not exactly sure how to talk about this book since it is a historical book. A lot of the times I'll kind of go through the plot, but the plot is really just talking about the Birdcage Theater. But it does... Okay, so this book goes through the inception of the theater, a little bit before the theater, all the way to basically modern day. It talks about who owned it. There were basically three major owners. I think the first owners, because it does a great thing where it talks about the various eras as the title chapters. Thank you very much, Michael. So William and Lottie Hutchinson created and founded the Birdcage Theater. Then it went to Joe Bignon, and I think finally the major person that owned it was Cummings. It doesn't say his first name, but his last name's Cummings. But yeah, so there were three major instances of the theater. And I thought it was really interesting that the Birdcage was only opened as a theater for like 11 years. It wasn't really that long. But it goes through the rise of the theater. It goes from how it was created, how it was constructed, how it worked, how they got the people that they got to be in the theater, what happened in the theater, how the initial people left it and had to sell it, what was going on in Tombstone at the time that kind of affected how the theater operated, what happened to it, then how it sat for quite a while until somebody else bought it, and then they tried to revitalize it. And then once again, after that person left, how it sat for years and years, and then somebody else bought it. And all of this in the span of like 30 years from its inception, because I think it originally opened in 1881. And I find it funny too, because there's a scene, if you've seen the movie Tombstone with Kurt Russell, there is a scene in the Birdcage Theater before the gunfight at the OK Corral. The gunfight, I think, happened in October. The Birdcage Theater didn't open until December. So, taking a little bit of a liberty there, Kurt Russell. Anyway, I still love that movie. I just thought it was interesting that it it wasn't around then before the gunfight at the OK Corral. I thought that was funny. But I really enjoyed this book. There is just fact after fact after fact in this book. I mean, I can't go through this book and just like every page is kind of something new. I really enjoyed this book. I think Mihaljevich did a great job researching it. So here, let's. I think that if you are interested in theater at all, the history of theater, how theater operated before the modern times, this is a great book for you. It talks about how they started the Birdcage Theater. It talks about other theaters of the time and how they did what they did, how they entertained a group of people on the frontier. That is very, very interesting. If you're interested in Western history, if you're interested in Tombstone, this is a great book for you. If you're interested in how things survive and how people grow a fondness for them, this is a good book for you. I found it interesting that in like the last revival of the Birdcage Theater before it became a museum, it was a coffee shop, a cafe that was kind of, yes, living off of that nostalgia. But I thought it was really interesting that it became a cafe where people, had their sandwiches and espressos or whatever. I don't know what, I mean, it wasn't modern era, so it was like the 40s or whatever. I don't know what they drank, if they just drank regular coffee or if they had like baristas back then. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought what happened to the people that owned the Birdcage, all the various people that owned the Birdcage, how their lives ended up was very interesting. Let's just say that nobody got rich off the Birdcage. I think you should read it to figure out what happened to them because it was very interesting how they all ended up. Almost like the Birdcage might have had a little bit of a curse on it, but I'm not gonna elaborate even more than that. So I thought that was interesting. I really thought that it was interesting too because this writer really took pains to kind of reveal the myths about the Birdcage. And I thought that was really interesting. I've read in other books, because I've read a lot of historical books about the time period and multiple books about Tombstone itself. I've read in those books that there was a card game, a poker game that happened in the Birdcage Theater and was basically 24/7 for like 7 years. It was like this famous thing that there was this forever game at the Birdcage. Never happened. This writer did extensive research, and there is no historical documents that said there was gambling ever at the Birdcage. Not only that, there was a big thing about how you could only have gambling in certain areas of town. You had to be zoned. You had to be licensed, kind of like nowadays. You have to have a license to gamble. You have to have a license to sell alcohol. The Birdcage was never zoned for that. There is no historical evidence that a card game, a professional card game of any sort, ever happened at the Birdcage. Prostitution. There's no historical evidence that prostitution ever happened at the Birdcage because, once again, it was not zoned for that. Now, granted, there might have been some weird stuff that happened, but there wasn't like downstairs. They say that, there were rooms for, like in the basement of the Birdcage, there were rooms for the prostitutes to work. It was a theater. Those were dressing rooms. Right? So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. The writer did do a lot to kind of expel the myths to reveal the real birdcage. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Another thing about that I thought was interesting is even in modern day, they talk about all the bullet holes, and basically there were shootings all the time and that kind of thing at the birdcage. And you can still see the bird cages, all of the bullets in the ceiling and on the stage or whatever. Well, Mihaljevich describes how over the years the birdcage was renovated many, many times. It was renovated by the first people that owned it. It was renovated a couple times by the second person that owned it. It was renovated by the last person that owned it. And then they made it a coffee shop. You think they were going to keep all the bullet holes all those times? So yeah, I thought that was interesting. So were the bullet holes created to heighten the romance, the myth of the birdcage? Because they probably weren't original. I thought that was really interesting. If I had a criticism of this book, it seemed to me that the writer wrote the book in sections. Like he would be writing one chapter and he would be writing another chapter as he got more information from various sources in his research. That being said, a lot of the times he would state the same concept or the same story over again. Like if he wrote a story about the Hutchinsons and something that happened when they owned the birdcage, if something else referred to it in another chapter, he would recite that story again. Like he either forgot that he had already written it or he hadn't written that section yet and he put it here. And then there would be like a throwaway sentence of, as I said before, or as I will say again. So that kind of bogged the book down a little bit. As ironically enough, I think too, as the book went on, that happened less and less as he got more removed from the time period of the birdcage actually being in operation. So I thought that was interesting. And if I had a criticism of the book, I think that would probably be my only one. So yeah, all of that. I really recommend The Birdcage. This is, for me, it was a really quick read. It's, let me see here. There's a lot of stuff in the back. There's also kind of a fun little, which I did read, kind of a fun little timeline through the years of the major events of The Birdcage. I thought that was interesting. But with the appendix of that kind of chronology, the book is only 273 pages. So it was a really quick read. I read it in probably like 4 days. I highly recommend it if you are interested in historical stuff like the theater, tombstone, Western time period. So yeah, good read. Thank you very much for watching. And if you are still here, keep reading. Thanks, everyone.